on, sing along, there's like 4 words. Hey everyone, John from Nintendo Life here, and today we're reviewing Cruis'n Blast for Nintendo Switch. But this review was originally written by Chris Scullion for NintendoLife.com and was adapted to video by me. And what's that very small font over there? That's right, Cruis'n is a first-party Nintendo IP, so hopefully this should be on your radar. Anyway, let's dive in. Long-time Nintendo fans will know that the Cruis'n series has an interesting history with the company. The original arcade version of the first game, Cruis'n USA, was said to be the first title running on Nintendo's upcoming Ultra 64 hardware, a claim which ultimately turned out to be a bit of a porcupine. Its subsequent N64 port was generally criticized, a bit unfairly, for not being up to scratch. But that wasn't enough to stop sequels, Cruis'n World and Cruis'n Exotica. These were followed by a GBA spin-off before the series quietly mothballed if we ignore the Wii game, which we probably should. But here comes Cruis'n Blast, an attempt to resurrect the series, and we're absolutely delighted that attempt was made. Blast was released in arcades in 2017, but the drastic reduction in foot traffic in arcades means for the vast majority of Switch owners, this will be their first experience with the game. And what an experience it is! Simply put, Cruis'n Blast is a fantastic example of what makes the arcade racing genre so entertaining. Fans of the arcade game would be happy to see that all 5 tracks are present and accounted for here, but given that comes to around 10 minutes of racing, it's probably a good job that the Switch version boasts a tour mode that includes significantly more tracks, an extra 24 of them to be precise, split into 6 tours of 4 races. Each tour focuses on a specific theme, be that night racing, racing through a storm, avoiding helicopter attacks, or dodging dinosaurs. The original Cruis'n games weren't exactly crazy. I mean, they obviously relied on the arcade-style racing. The series didn't really start showing signs of wackiness until the 3rd game. And even then, that just meant a couple of novel courses set in the likes of Mars or Atlantis. The actual racing itself was fairly tame, bar the addition of wheelies and the like in the later games. Cruis'n Blast then outdoes its predecessors by offering a ridiculously over-the-top series of high-octane tracks, each with spectacular set pieces. One of the London tracks, for example, opens with the London Eye breaking free from its structure and rolling across the road, shortly before one of its passenger capsules detaches and lands with a crash right in front of you. Another track has you driving off a huge jump, seemingly into the path of a huge Yeti waiting to grab you, but before you get to it, the floor gives way and you crash through to an underground section. There are countless examples like this throughout the game, and rhyming off a list of them is ruining the surprise. But rest assured, each level has its own absurd moments like this. But this would all be for naught if the game itself wasn't actually fun to control, but the handling is perfectly weighted, and the drift mechanic takes no time to learn at all. Before long, you'll be learning how to drift on straights, and this is necessary to win on the harder difficulties. While you start off with a handful of licensed cars, including a Hammer, a Nissan GTR, and a 1959 Corvette, you can eventually unlock more vehicles by completing the game's various 4 race tours, and by finding hidden keys on the tracks. Later vehicles range from slightly less conventional examples like a police car, a Formula 1 car, a motorbike, and a fire engine, to more ridiculous examples like a helicopter, a UFO, and a Triceratops. All of these cars can be leveled up by using them in numerous races. This lets you unlock upgrades like neon lighting, special decals, and body redesigns. The game's longevity then comes in collecting all 87 hidden keys, getting gold trophies on each of the 6 tours in all the 4 difficulties, and then leveling up each of the game's vehicles to the maximum level. That's going to take you a while, but it will be fun getting there. For those seeking multiplayer action, there's split screen for up to 4 players or local wireless, and it performs pretty well. But there's no online to speak of in any capacity, and that's a shame. We'd have loved to have the game's carnage improved with the unpredictability of online racing, though we suppose triggering set pieces might get a bit more difficult with more players. So that leaves performance. Cruis'n Blast aims for 60 FPS, and when it manages this, it runs really well. But it must be said, this is not consistent, especially when you apply a turbo boost, the frame rate can plummet. But not to go overboard, these frame drops are far from devastating. It's just a shame that an arcade racer that thrives on breaking the rules and going wild should feel restrained in some way. We weren't sure what to expect with Cruis'n Blast, given the N64 trilogy received a mixed reception back in the day. We enjoyed those N64 games, but we're fully aware not everyone felt the same way. But rest assured that Cruis'n Blast is very much its own thing, and is a hilariously over-the-top demonstration of what the arcade racing genre can really pull off when it's at its very best. And when we say that, we mean the genre as a whole. It may have the Cruis'n name attached to it, but some of its ridiculous moments reminded us more of midway races like San Francisco Rush 2049 and Hydro Thunder, while some of its enormous jumps feel straight out of Excitruck. And if titles like that get you excited, this game is for you. We here at Nintendo Life give Cruis'n Blast an 8 out of 10. Thank you so much for watching, and for more Switch reviews, of course, check out nintendolife.com and blast into that subscribe button, and we'll see you next time. Bye everyone. But we're not quite done, because I also play Cruis'n Blast, and I have quite a bit to say about this one. I was really looking forward to this, because Nintendo have a ton of racing IPs that they just don't touch anymore. It's basically just Mario Kart and nothing else. And to have another Nintendo racer on the market is a pretty big deal. Their name isn't plastered over this one, but Cruis'n still is a Nintendo property. And as someone who loves Excitruck and Excitebots, this really scratches that itch. It's just a really fun and fast and over-the-top racer, and it's something we don't really see on the market much these days. However, there are of course criticisms in there. One thing we didn't mention in the review is that plenty of tracks are kind of rehashes of each other. Like the Yeti jump described earlier, actually reappears later with a dinosaur theme. It's definitely a cool way to reuse content and add a bit of spice, but I think take the track number with a grain of salt, because there aren't really that many tracks when a few of them are repeated a few times. And I really do wish there were some kind of online play. Yeah, the set pieces are triggered by you, the player, but that doesn't seem to matter for the other racers. Like, you'll often see the CPU just kind of goes through a wall or something, because for them the set piece triggered, but for you, it didn't. And I don't think that would be very different online. It just feels like that would have given the game some legs, and unfortunately, it doesn't have that. What we're left with is a really fun local racer, and that's fine for what it is, but I really do wish it had online. Though I suppose I do love Excitruck, and that didn't have online, though Excitebots did, not that anyone really played it. So there's definitely still fun and value to be had. I think this is just a really cool game to have on the Switch, not just an arcade port, but a Nintendo property. It's one thing I couldn't have predicted, and it's definitely a genre that's lacking in the Switch's library. Like, yeah, there are older arcade racers out there, but something a bit more modern? Not really, not like this at least. If you want something different, a bit of variety, and a little bit of history, then I recommend checking out Cruis'n Blast. It really is very good.